Good afternoon, relatives. Today is the day Se Malinali, one grass, in the Reitena Etzaqualitzli, Shikwase Tosli Shiwi, the year 6 rabbit, in the Calendario Mexica, the Calendario Azteca, the Calendario de Iscaloteca. It's also the Sunday, July the 1st, in calendar of Pope Gregory. And we're here today now at the close of the Protecting Mother Earth Conference that has taken place here at Frank's Landing in the territory of the Puyallup Nation, alongside the Nisqually River. And you can see here the main tent is vacated for the most part here because everybody's here at lunch. That's Tom Goldtooth there, the executive director of the Indigenous Environmental Network. The folks are at lunch because this is the last lunch before people start heading out and heading home after 4 days of gathering here at the Protecting Mother Earth Conference on the banks of the Nisqually River at Frank's Landing, which is the site of the historic and the iconic struggles of the Puyallup Nation to defend their way of life, their cultural identity, their dignity as human beings and as families and communities and nations, as people who fish from this river from time immemorial, sustain themselves, feed their families, and have flourished. Even to the point that when the Anglo-American invaders came to colonize and settle estates, sometimes this area is known as the state of Washington. But the Nisqually River and the Puyallup Nation, this was way long time ago here before George Washington was ever born, and much less they put his name on a territorial designation of a settler state, Washington. This is it. The stories we were told when we were young people, we're not so young now, but when we were young then, they would tell stories of how in this river, at this location, the battles were fought. You can go to the YouTube, to the online, and you'll see these same waters and banks on the shores, and you're going to see elderly people, grandmas even, being attacked and beaten and tear gassed by the state military of Washington, who was trying to prevent them from exercising their treaty right to fish this river for the salmon. And so they persevered and fought on. 50 arrests some of the folks had, the Frank family, Janet McLeod, the leaders here. They've been here throughout these 4 days, recalling, regenerating, and reigniting the calls of uprising that took place here at this river during the fight for the fishing rights that are inscribed in treaties that the Puyallup Nation has with the United States federal government. So those treaty rights, the right to fish, to provide for their families, this was what was the core part of the struggle that took place here at this river in the 70s. The fishing rights fight, Frank's Landing, this is it. And so it's been at this location then that you can see over there, that's one of those people there, that's Gloria. She's from the Amazon of Ecuador. She was here. Also the Quechua people here from the Mapuches were here. And also we had a representative of the Lenca Nation from the Copin organization, Honduras, to talk about the campaign to bring justice for the case of the assassination of Berta Cáceres, who also gave her life fighting to die, fighting to defend the Gualcarque River in Honduras. The Copín, the Lenca Nation, was also here. Also was here the defenders of the Rio Yaqui. Maria Luna Romero, the Rio Yaqui defenders were here. And also were here was representation from Mexico, the Cheranqueri people were here. And this is an ongoing process that has been building and questioning in prayer and in power, to the point that yesterday from this gathering a commission was sent forth. A commission was sent forth to stand at the doorway of the gates of the Federal Detention Center in Tacoma, Washington. Why? Because it's at that detention center in Tacoma, Washington, where the thousands of families that their children have been from their mothers taken, and parents, fathers, separated due to the pogrom of persecution that is titled the Zero Tolerance Policy by Mr. Magoo himself, the Attorney General. There was his own president, Donald Trump, who called him Mr. Magoo. I'm just repeating. Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions, instigated a pogrom of persecution, called it a policy under the U.S. Immigration, Customs and Enforcement, ICE, and called it a zero tolerance policy, to where any human being, even if it was a mom with a child or an infant, coming across the border who, without their permission, happened to be in this part of the country, north of that border, was going to be considered a criminal violation and therefore subject to immediate separation from their kinfolk, even if it was a child or an infant. When we were coming to this conference that started on the 28th of June, 4 days ago, the number was 2,000, 3,000. That's what they said. The number of children separated that were being placed in detention centers that were spread around the country. And one of them is here, apparently, that the parents were brought to this area in Tacoma. 2,000 to 3,000 cases. Yet, even 2 days ago, that number jumped up to 11,000, somewhere in that range, 10 to 11,000. And then, as you know, if you've been following the stories, there's reporting that President Trump has given orders to the U.S. military, and they've responded. They're preparing camps in Texas, at the military bases in Texas, for up to 20,000 of these human beings being separated as children, as infants, from their moms and dads for the act of being on this side of an imaginary line that was put in place in 1848. After the U.S. declared the racist war of manifest destiny on the Republic of Mexico, which was just born as an independent republic in 1821. 25 years later, the war machine of the Anglo-American imperial project known as America attacks Mexico, jumps across their own borders that they had established between France, Spain, and Great Britain. Those borders they violated and jumped westward in pursuit of the blitzkrieg of manifest destiny, the bloodlust and territorial landlust desire, known as manifest destiny, waging war in Mexico and taking that territory by war, blood, and then putting the border that now is supposedly the issue of toleration or no toleration, according to Mr. Magoo. So what it is, yesterday, the commission was sent from this gathering at the banks of the Nisqually River, Frank's Landing, to bring a statement of compassion, solidarity, alliance, and recognition to the families of the folks that are detained in the Tacoma Center of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement private contractor that operates that facility. In that statement that was given, you saw the image at the beginning of this casting, like they were casting into the river for the fish. We're casting into the social media for the meaning of the message. How many years has it been since the papal bulls of Alexander VI, 1493? How many years has it been since Christopher Columbus and World War I, October the 12th, 1492, it began the invasion of our continent, the great turtle island of Yayala? And how many much long time will that be tolerated? Can that be tolerated? The answer is 0. It's a very simple answer. 525 years since October the 12th, 1492. But there is no reason, there is no good reason it has to go to 526. And this is the message that was taken to Tacoma from this gathering. The relatives here of the Puyallup Nation, the relatives here of the whole continent, even from the Aotearoa that were here, made it very simply known, clear, and declared that these relatives who are here are not illegals. As Indigenous peoples, they're not criminals either. As Indigenous peoples, we are not immigrants in our own continent. And this statement of acknowledging, accepting, and emitting a message and a meaning of the love for our relatives to the people detained in that Tacoma facility of detention by ICE was brought to the gate yesterday and delivered, and is being shared to the world with the same message too. The authorities of representation of the settler states of the United States of America and the cohorts and their fellow Mr. Magoos and whatever cartoon characters that they could drum up over 525 years. The message is simply this: colonialism, 0 tolerance. From here on, now, and forevermore, as long as the grass is green, as long as the grass grows, and as long as the river flows, this message will continue to be reiterated and re-articulated and brought forward. That from this time on and from these days on now, colonialism, 0 tolerance. The state of Washington is a state in the 50 states of the United States because in 1846, there was a deal done between Great Britain and the United States where they transferred it, the franchise, and called it the Oregon Territory, 1846. Prior to that, in 1845, Texas had jumped into the pile, the dog pile of the United Snakes, and became a state in 1845 after existing for a time as an independent republic. And then prior to that, in 1803, it was King Louis of France, right? King Louis of France, he had the Louisiana Purchase. He passed that over to Uncle Sam, but he himself, he had only had that Louisiana Purchase territory for 3 years. In 1800, King Louis of France got that from the King of Spain. The King of Spain, the King of France, Great Britain, Uncle Sam. But where did any of these so-called political authorities derive their jurisdiction to claim the right to claim a policy of tolerance or intolerance, the right of governance or colonization? We all know the answer. We know it rhetorically, we know it in terms of every single school rhyme that's told about Christopher Columbus, but all of those are pieces of evidence of the crime of colonization and the crime of genocide, which as of United Nations Resolution 1514 in 1960, which proclaimed all peoples have the right of self-determination and proclaimed colonization a crime. Colonization is a criminal act. And the borders of colonization are also criminal and illegal borders. They're violations of humanity. So therefore, once again today, the original nations of indigenous peoples assembled at the banks of the Nisqually River, Frank's Landing, Puyallup Nation's territory, in the Protect Mother Earth gathering, I brought the message to each other and to our relatives incarcerated in those detention centers of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that you are not illegals, you are not criminals within our nationhood, within our confederacies, and on our territories. And Tacoma is in the territory of the Puyallup Nation. The treaties of the Puyallup Nation's people with the U.S. government affirm and attest to that. And no cession of territorial responsibility or rights, no cession of responsibility of the original nations would ever exceed or concede to the cession of the right to be human with each and every other one of our relatives of this Mother Earth. We're all children of this Mother Earth. We're all children of the original nations of Mother Earth at one time or another. And so we took our stand again yesterday in front of the detention center there in Tacoma. And as this conference is concluding today, that message will be amplified and elevated to the world community once more, along with all of the other necessary action items that are going to be taking place now and up to the climate justice march against the false solutions of the climate chaos crisis upon humanity in September. And they will be consolidated and integrated and visioned, empowered, and put to bear in terms of action of what we're going to do to reaffirm the cultural climate of the original nations that we share with each other according to our spirituality and cultural practices and traditions and teachings, so that the seed that is embedded in those teachings and knowledge systems and histories and memory can once again be brought forward and shared with humanity, so that we collectively all together, and in that we there is no they, it's all we can find the vision, the consciousness, and the will to move forward into the relationship of justice and harmony with each other and with the natural world. Tupac Wewekoyo, on the fourth concluding day of the Protecting Mother Earth Conference, speaking to you at the banks of the Nisqually River, Frank's Landing in the Puyallup Nation. Ayo.